The accusation that would destroy her came at 9:47 on a Friday night, wrapped in laughter and the smell of cheap whiskey. October 12th, 1898, San Diego. The Iron Anchor Bar 2 blocks from the Naval Pier. 28-year-old Thea Cordell had just pulled a drowning boy from the water with movements too tactical, too precise for a bartender. Now 8 Navy men surrounded her, drunk and loud, demanding answers. One of them held a phonograph recorder capturing everything. "What's your military call sign?" Lieutenant Marcus Holloway asked, grinning at his audience. "Beer girl, bottle babe." The bar erupted in laughter, stolen valor jokes, the kind of mockery that happened when warriors found fresh meat. Thea had 2 choices: stay silent and watch 9 months of undercover work collapse, or speak 2 classified words that would trigger an avalanche she couldn't stop. Her hands rested onto the bar top, completely still. The breathing came automatic now. 4 counts in hold, for 4, 4 counts out, hold for 4. The rhythm that kept operators alive when panic meant death. She looked past the lieutenant to the corner booth. Master Chief Silas Brennan, 52, Bronze Star, Silver Star, legend status. The man she'd been hunting. The traitor who'd sold convoy routes for 18 months. 15 American sailors dead because of him. He was watching her now, waiting. In another corner sat Master Chief Emmett Garrison. 45-3 combat deployments. His daughter had died in the Manila ambush 2 years ago. The ambush someone sold out. The ambush Thea survived. Her voice came quiet, each word deliberate. Nighthawk. 2 heartbeats of silence. Then a glass shattered against the floor like a gunshot. Garrison's face drained of color. His hand reached unconsciously for dog tags he hadn't worn in 2 years. Brennan went completely white, the bourbon forgotten in his hand, because Nighthawk was classified. Tier 1, 8 operators, 7 killed in action, Manila, 1896. And the woman they thought was just a bartender had just claimed the call sign of the dead. The accusation that would destroy her came at 9:47 on a Friday night, wrapped in laughter and the smell of cheap whiskey. The Iron Anchor sat 2 blocks from the San Diego Naval Pier, close enough that sailors could stumble there, straight off the gangplanks, far enough that officers pretended not to notice what happened inside. October 12th, 1898. The air through the open windows carried salt and diesel smoke, the peculiar mix that marked every port city where warships gathered like sharks waiting to feed. Thea Cordell stood behind the bar, wiping down the counter in the mechanical rhythm she'd perfected over 9 months of invisible servitude. 28 years old, auburn hair, pulled back in a simple braid, nothing remarkable except the barely noticeable limp in her left leg and the way her hands never quite stopped moving. The scar tissue from old shrapnel ran from her hip to her knee, hidden beneath dark work pants that had seen better days. Nobody looked at bartenders long enough to notice scars. The Friday crowd packed the main room shoulder to shoulder. Navy men fresh back from the Philippines, their uniforms still carrying the red dust of Manila roads, their voices loud with the particular arrogance of young warriors who'd survived their first real campaign. Contractors mixed with enlisted men, retired operators, nursing beers in corner booths. The whole ecosystem of military life compressed into one smoke-filled room where secrets traded hands as freely as currency. Thea poured a whiskey, neat, slid it across the bar to a weathered Master Chief who nodded without making eye contact. Her gaze swept the room with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned to catalog threats before they fully materialized. Corner booth on the left, retired Master Chief Silas Brennan, 52 years old, Bronze Star from Manila Bay, the kind of naval legend young sailors wanted to become. He sat alone, nursing his 3rd bourbon of the night, checking his pocket watch with the regularity of a man expecting someone. She'd watched him sit in that exact spot every other Tuesday for 9 months. Same booth, same drink, same 37-minute meetings with a man named Luther Torres, who worked for Nexus Strategic Firm. The pattern never varied. Torres would arrive at 2100 hours carrying a thin leather briefcase. They would talk in voices too low for normal hearing to catch. Torres would leave first. Brennan would finish his drink and disappear into the San Diego night. And 48 to 72 hours later, classified naval intelligence files would be accessed from unauthorized terminals using credentials that belonged to Rear Admiral Thaddeus Merrick. 1 week after each access, American sailors would die in ambushes that shouldn't have been possible. 15 dead in 9 months. The correlation was 93%. Statistical impossibility to explain as coincidence. Thea set down the whiskey bottle, her hand steady despite the rage that lived permanent and cold in her chest. 2 years of hunting had led here. 2 years since the Manila Road, since the convoy that should have been routine, since 7 teammates died screaming while she lay broken in a drainage ditch, too injured to help, too conscious to look away. The door banged open. 8 Navy men entered like a weather system, loud and churning and impossible to ignore. Lieutenant Marcus Holloway led them, 27 years old, fresh-faced, with the kind of confidence that came from a first successful deployment. He carried one of the new Edison phonograph recorders, the portable kind that captured sound on wax cylinders for playback later. The technology was barely 5 years old, still novel enough that people treated recordings like magic. 20 minutes ago, Thea had pulled a 9-year-old boy out of the pier water after he'd fallen through rotted planking. The kid had been drowning 30 seconds from brain damage, nobody else moving fast enough. She'd gone in, without hesitation, bad leg, and all hauled him out with a fireman's carry that shouldn't have been possible for someone her size. The boy's mother had been hysterical with gratitude. The small crowd that gathered had watched with the stunned silence of people witnessing competence they didn't expect. Holloway had been in that crowd. His phonograph had been recording. Now he and his crew approached the bar with the swagger of men who decided to make someone's night interesting. Sailors parted to let them through. This was entertainment. This was shore leave. This was what happened when warriors drank and found a target. Holloway slapped the bar top hard enough to rattle glasses. His companions spread out on either side, a formation they probably didn't realize they were making the muscle memory of men trained to dominate space. The bartender. He drew out the words playing to his audience. The one who just went full action hero on that drowning kid. You just saved a life like you'd done it 1,000 times. Smooth as silk, professional as hell. Thea set down the glass she'd been drying, looked at him with the blank pleasantness she'd cultivated over months of being underestimated. Can I get you gentlemen something? Oh, we'll get to that. Holloway pulled the phonograph closer, the cylinder still recording the mechanical whisper of the device audible in the sudden quiet. But first I need to know. You move like military. That rescue, that was tactical. So I've got to ask. The air in the bar shifted. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they modulated, people leaning in without seeming to ears tuned to whatever came next. What's your call sign? The laughter started before he finished the question. One of his companions, a kid who couldn't have been more than 20, shouted from the back. Beer girl, another one louder, bottle babe. The group erupted. Someone made a joke about stolen valor. Someone else suggested dishwasher. The kind of ribbing that happened when warriors drank and someone new became the target. Thea's hands rested on the bar top, completely still. The kind of still that came from absolute control, from years of learning to override panic through pure disciplined breathing. 4 counts and hold for 4. 4 counts, out hold for 4. The rhythm that had kept her alive in Manila when her body was broken and shock tried to drag her under. Her eyes moved past Holloway to the corner, where Master Chief Emmett Garrison sat alone. 45 years old, gray, threading through his dark beard, 3 Caribbean campaign ribbons on the civilian jacket he wore over his work shirt. A man who'd spent 25 years in service and learned to read rooms the way some men read books. Garrison wasn't laughing. His beer had stopped halfway to his mouth, his face showing something between recognition and disbelief. Then her gaze shifted across the room to Silas Brennan's booth. The legend, the hero, the traitor. Brennan had gone absolutely still, not the stillness of control, the stillness of a man who had just heard a name that shouldn't exist. Thea's voice came quiet, each word deliberate and measured pitch to carry just far enough. Nighthawk. The bar didn't go silent immediately. Took 2 full heartbeats. Someone laughed, a nervous reflex that died in his throat when nobody joined in. A glass dropped somewhere in the back, shattered against the floor with a sound like a gunshot. The echo hung in suddenly empty air. Emmett Garrison's beer stopped completely. His face drained of color, his tan skin going ashen in the space of 3 seconds. His hand moved unconsciously to his chest, reaching for dog tags he hadn't worn outside his shirt in 2 years, not since they'd buried his daughter at Arlington with full military honors. Silas Brennan went white, completely white. The bourbon forgotten in his hand, eyes locked on Thea like she was a ghost, made flesh, like she was the one thing he'd spent years praying would stay buried. Holloway didn't understand, too young, too new. Never deployed to the Philippines, never heard the stories whispered in ready rooms about units that didn't officially exist, about operators who were never officially there. He laughed louder, pulled the phonograph recorder higher, the cylinder capturing every word for posterity. Nighthawk, he drew out the words, made them mockery. That's the most wannabe special forces nonsense I've ever heard. Sounds like something from a dime novel. What's next? Are you going to tell us you're a secret government assassin? His companions joined in, nervous at first, then louder, feeding off each other's energy, and the liquor, and the fundamental need young men had to prove themselves by tearing someone else down. The recording cylinder spun, documenting everything, preserving the moment when 8 sailors decided a bartender needed to be put in her place. Holloway was already composing the post in his head. The Iron Anchor Regulars Group had 300 members, active sailors and retired operators and contractors, the whole brotherhood that connected naval special warfare across deployments and decades. His mental caption wrote itself. Bartender claims call sign Nighthawk. Stolen valor serving whiskey. Who's going to tell her she's a fraud? In the corner, Emmett Garrison stood slowly. The movement drew no attention, too gradual, too controlled. He moved toward the bar like a man approaching a grave he'd thought was sealed forever. His boots made no sound on the wooden floor. When he spoke, his voice was low, meant only for Thea, each word careful as a man diffusing ordnance. That call sign, you don't throw that around. People died carrying it. Thea met his eyes, held them. Something passed between them in the space of that look. Some recognition that went deeper than words, the particular understanding that existed only between people who'd lost the same way, who'd watched teammates die and survived when they shouldn't have. I know, Master Chief. I was there. Garrison's jaw worked. He wanted to ask more, wanted to understand, needed to know if she was real or delusion or some kind of cruel trick his grief was playing. But something in her expression stopped him. The absolute certainty, the controlled fury, the eyes that had seen things nobody should see and remembered every detail with perfect clarity. He turned instead to Holloway, his voice taking on edges that came from 25 years of command, from leading men in combat and knowing exactly how much authority his tone could carry. Lieutenant, delete that recording. Holloway blinked, the momentum of his mockery interrupted. What, why? Because you're making assumptions you're not qualified to make. Because you're about to do something profoundly stupid. Come on, Chief. You really think some bartender actually earned a Tier 1 call sign? Look at her. I think you should shut your mouth and sober up before you embarrass yourself worse than you already have. Garrison's voice had gone quiet, now the kind of quiet that made smart men nervous. That call sign is classified at levels you don't have clearance to discuss. Delete the recording, now. Holloway didn't delete it. Waved Garrison off with the casual dismissal of youth that hadn't yet learned the difference between confidence and stupidity. The old Master Chief was just being overprotective. Probably had a thing for the bartender. The recording stayed up. In his pocket, his finger was already hitting the post button, sending the phonograph transcript to the Iron Anchor Regulars private group. In his corner booth, Silas Brennan pulled out a small notebook, the kind contractors carried for orders and specifications. He wrote 3 words in careful script: Nighthawk alive. Tore out the page, folded it twice, and slipped it into his jacket. Tomorrow morning, he'd have it couriered to a postal box in Virginia that forwarded to an address in Costa Rica that led to a man who didn't officially exist. Vice Admiral Preston Ravenswood, retired, the kind of officer who'd spent 30 years building networks that operated in shadows where oversight couldn't reach. The message would arrive in 4 days. Ravenswood would read it over breakfast at a cafe in San Jose, and he would understand immediately that 2 years of careful architecture was about to collapse unless decisive action was taken. But that was 4 days away. Tonight, the damage was already spreading. Thea returned to wiping down the bar. Her breathing followed that pattern, the rhythm invisible to everyone except Garrison, who'd seen it before in pre-deployment briefings, in combat stress management courses, in the faces of operators who'd learned to override their nervous systems through pure discipline, because panic meant mission failure, and failure meant people died. He sat back down in his corner booth, watched, said nothing, the weight of memory pressing down like physical force. 26 months ago, his daughter Annalise had been 26 years old, a Navy photographer assigned to convoy security in the Philippines. She'd been good at her job, the kind of competent professional who made everyone around her better just by being present. She'd written letters home twice a week, always upbeat, always certain that the work they were doing mattered, that the intelligence they gathered would save lives. The official report said the convoy hit an improvised ambush outside Manila. 7 killed in action. Hostile fire and explosive devices. The kind of tragic accident that happened in war zones where enemy forces had local knowledge and American convoys followed predictable routes. Garrison had buried his daughter at Arlington on a cold November morning. The honor guard had folded the flag with mechanical precision. The rifles had fired their salute into gray sky. The bugler had played taps while Garrison stood frozen, holding the folded triangle of fabric that was supposed to represent something meaningful, some comfort, some acknowledgement that his little girl's death had purpose. It hadn't. Not then. Not in the months after, when grief turned to questions and questions led to dead ends and official channels stonewalled every inquiry with the polite efficiency of bureaucracy protecting itself. But now a bartender with a limp and careful hands had just spoken the call sign his daughter had carried. The designation that appeared in exactly 0 official records, that existed only in classified files, sealed at levels that required admiral signatures to access. Nighthawk, the unit that didn't exist. The operation that never happened. The 8 operators who'd been erased from history except for 7 names carved on Arlington stones. Garrison pulled a small notebook from his jacket, started writing. If this woman was real, if she'd actually been there, then maybe the last 2 years of official silence were about to crack open. Maybe his daughter's death was about to mean something after all. The night continued around them. More drinks, more jokes, more deployment, stories growing in each retelling. But something had shifted. Something that had started 9 months ago, when a woman nobody noticed had taken a job serving beer to men who thought themselves warriors. Something that was about to crack wide open and take down everyone who'd built careers on the bodies of operators who trusted their intelligence was secure. In his booth, Silas Brennan finished his bourbon, left exact change on the table, walked out into the San Diego night without looking back. His daughter Nora was 9 years old, tubercular, dying by inches, in an expensive sanatorium that charged $2,000 per year for experimental treatments that might not work. $2,000 he'd made by selling convoy routes and forced dispositions to Luther Torres, who paid in cash and never asked uncomfortable questions about where the information came from or what it would be used for. 15 operators dead, 15 families destroyed. Also, a little girl who loved her father could have a chance at breathing without drowning in her own lungs. Brennan walked faster, the night air cold on his face, the weight of what he'd done settling heavier with every step. Behind him, the iron anchor glowed warm in the darkness, light spilling from windows, the sound of men drinking and laughing and living unaware that their comfortable world was balanced on the edge of a blade that was about to fall. 8 months earlier, the office at Naval Intelligence Headquarters in Washington had no windows. Fluorescent lamps that wouldn't be properly invented for another decade cast the kind of steady electric light that made everything look slightly unreal. Brigadier General Constance Hartwell sat across from Thea, 3 stars on her shoulders, catching the light like warnings. Your team died in the Philippines. Hartwell's voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel, just stating reality the way commanding officers learned to deliver information that destroyed lives. 7 killed in action, convoy ambush outside Manila. October 1896. Someone sold your route to Russian-backed mercenaries. They were waiting. Thea's face showed nothing. Her hands rested on the table, completely still. The kind of still that came from absolute control from sitting in that drainage ditch for 6 hours while medics worked to stabilize her enough for transport, while her teammates' bodies cooled 30 feet away, while shock tried to drag her under, and she'd forced herself to stay conscious through pure stubborn refusal to die. We traced the money. Hartwell slid a folder across the table. 18 months of following shell companies and coded transactions. The trail leads to Nexus Strategic Firm, private military contractor. They've been buying classified naval tactical intelligence. Not opportunistic, systematic. They know what they need, when to buy it, how to use it without getting caught. How many operators have died? Hartwell paused. The silence stretched long enough to communicate what words couldn't, at least 15. Confirmed, probably more, we haven't connected yet. The ambushes are too precise. The enemy force dispositions too accurate. Someone is buying American blood and selling it to the highest bidder. A clock ticked on the wall. Somewhere down the corridor, someone laughed about something that didn't matter, the sound obscene in its normalcy. We need someone who doesn't exist. Hartwell opened the folder, turned it so Thea could see. Someone with the skill set to investigate at the operator level. Someone who can blend into military communities without raising flags. Someone who's already dead. Thea looked at the paperwork. Her own death certificate, official Naval Department seal, dated October 14th, 1896. Listed as killed in action during convoy engagement outside Manila. Official record, Department of Defense sealed. Your official status is KIA. We can keep it that way. Reclassify you as ghost status for strategic operations. You'd be Naval Intelligence Special Operations Division. Deep cover, no support, no backup unless you trigger emergency protocols. 9 months minimum, possibly longer. You'd live as someone else completely. New identity, new history, new face to the world. Where's the leak coming from? Naval Station San Diego. Someone senior, someone with access to convoy planning and deployment schedules, someone who uses a bar called the Iron Anchor as a meeting point. Operators talk when they drink. Contractors mix with active duty. Secrets slip in the noise. Hartwell pulled out a photograph. Silas Brennan, 52 years old, retired Master Chief, 28 years of service, Bronze Star from Manila-based Silver Star, from a classified operation in the Caribbean. The kind of operator the Navy built recruiting posters around. He meets a Nexus representative every 2 weeks. Same booth, cash transactions. Lifestyle doesn't match his retirement income. Medical bills for his daughter's tuberculosis treatment exceed his pension by significant margin. He's our primary suspect. Primary suspect implies others. The file access requires admiral-level credentials. Someone higher provided access, either directly involved or catastrophically careless with security protocols. We don't know which yet. That's what you're going to find out. What's the mission? Infiltrate. Observe, document, build a case that will stand up in court-martial proceedings. Get us everyone in the network. Not just Brennan, everyone. From the courier to whoever's authorizing the access to whoever's buying the intelligence on the other end. Timeline. However long it takes. Could be months, could be years. You'll work as a contractor, technical consultant, low profile, part-time information systems support on base. Part-time at the Iron Anchor. Stay close to Brennan. Build the pattern. Be patient. Hartwell stood, extended her hand. You don't have to do this. You've earned rest. A desk assignment, teaching position at the academy. Nobody would question it after what you survived. Thea shook her hand. The grip was firm, final, the handshake of someone who'd already made the decision before the question was asked. 7 teammates died because someone sold us out. I'll rest when every single person responsible is in prison or in the ground. Fair enough. Welcome to Operation Sovereign Ghost. The name is classified above top secret. If you're compromised, if your cover breaks, you press the emergency extraction. We pull you out, the investigation ends, and whoever killed your team stays free to do it again. Understood. The door closed. The electric lights hummed. Thea sat alone with a folder full of lies that would become her truth for however long the mission required. She opened it again, studied Silas Brennan's face, memorized every detail. The laugh lines around his eyes, the silver in his beard, the unit insignia tattooed on his forearm. A hero, a legend, a traitor. She'd prove it, however long it took, whatever it cost. 7 teammates deserve that much. Deserve someone who refused to let their deaths mean nothing. In the photograph, Brennan smiled at the camera, relaxed and confident, a man who'd spent his entire adult life serving his country with distinction. The kind of man young sailors wanted to become. The kind of man who made recruitment videos and inspired loyalty and commanded respect through decades of competent professional service. The kind of man nobody would suspect of treason until it was too late. Thea closed the folder, committed the face to memory. In 9 months, she'd be serving him bourbon while he sold information that would get more operators killed. She'd smile and pour drinks and be invisible. She'd document every meeting, every transaction, every piece of the pattern that would eventually hang him. Broken things can still cut. The thought came unbidden, the words Annalise Garrison had whispered in that drainage ditch while blood pooled beneath them both, while the world tilted sideways and shock tried to drag them under. You're broken, Thea, but broken things can still cut. Don't you forget it. She hadn't, wouldn't, couldn't. Back in the present, the iron anchor slowly emptied as midnight approached. Thea closed out registers, wiped down tables, the mechanical routine of ending a shift. Her phone buzzed once. Text from a number that appeared on her screen as technical support, generic and forgettable. Actually, her NCIS handler, the lifeline to the world where she still existed as someone real. Status. She typed back one word: compromised. The response came immediately. Extract. She paused, looked around the bar, at Silas Brennan's empty booth where he'd sit again in exactly 14 days. At the contractors who came every Tuesday and Thursday. At the pattern she'd spent 9 months building. The correlation data that was 93% certain. The proof that was almost complete. Not yet. Protocol says extract when cover is burned. Protocol doesn't catch traitors. One more cycle. 2 weeks. I can finish this. The phone didn't buzz again. Her handler had made their position clear. She'd made hers. The mission continued until she decided it was done. Regulations and protocols and official channels be damned. Thea finished closing, walked out into the San Diego night, salt air and humidity, the ocean 2 blocks west, the base 2 miles north. Her apartment was contractor housing, small and anonymous, nothing personal, except the encrypted laptop and the external drive hidden inside a hollowed-out book on the shelf. She'd sleep tonight? Maybe. Probably not. The dreams would come like they always did. The convoy, the explosion, the screaming, Annalise's face going gray as blood loss dragged her under her last words, a promise Thea had sworn to keep. Tomorrow would bring consequences. The phonograph recording was already viral on Navy bulletin boards. The stolen valor accusations would multiply. Base security would investigate. Her carefully constructed cover would start to crack. Good. Pressure made people careless, made them reveal things they'd kept hidden, made networks fracture and secrets slip out. She'd spent 9 months being invisible. Maybe it was time to be seen. Time to force Brennan's hand. Time to make everyone who'd profited from dead operators understand that ghosts didn't stay buried forever. Some came back, and when they did, they carried blades. The morning after the Nighthawk video hit the Navy bulletin boards, Thea arrived for her shift at 1700 hours. The owner intercepted her before she reached the bar. Dan Morrison was a retired Navy quartermaster, 63 years old, the kind of man who'd spent 30 years managing supply chains and learning that the easiest path was usually the correct one. His face carried the uncomfortable expression of someone forced into a conversation he'd rather avoid. Look, he kept his voice low, glanced around to make sure nobody was listening. I don't know what happened last night, what you said, but I've had 7 calls this morning. People saying you're claiming military credentials you didn't earn, saying you're impersonating special operations, saying you're committing federal crimes right here in my establishment. Thea met his eyes, said nothing, let him talk. I can't have that kind of heat. You understand the Navy community is tight. Word spreads. If people think I'm harboring someone running a stolen valor scam, I'll lose half my customers by next week. The iron anchor survives because sailors trust it. Trust me. And right now, you're making that trust very complicated. I understand. Morrison nodded relief, washing across his face that she wasn't going to fight him on this. Good. Keep your head down. Do your job. Let this blow over. People have short memories when the next scandal comes along. Just give it time. He paused, his expression softening slightly. You're a good worker. Best bartender I've had in 5 years. You show up on time, you don't steal. You don't cause drama. I don't want to lose you. But if this escalates, if base security gets involved, if this becomes a legal problem, I'll have no choice. You understand that? Yes, sir. All right then. He nodded once more, a man satisfied that uncomfortable duty had been discharged, and headed back toward his office. Thea moved behind the bar, set up her station with the same mechanical precision she'd used for 9 months. Checked the register, restocked beer coolers, arranged bottles in the order that made the most sense for efficient service. The routine that had become second nature, the invisible labor that kept a bar running while customers never noticed the work involved. The first sailors arrived at 1800 hours. Different group from last night, younger, fresh off a training exercise that had run long and left them hungry for something stronger than water. But they'd seen the video, heard the story. Word traveled fast in communities where everybody knew everybody else's business. One of them ordered whiskey, slid money across the bar without making eye contact. His companion, bolder or drunker or just younger and stupider, laughed loud enough to carry. Come on, man, ask her what her call sign is. Maybe tonight she's Delta Force. Maybe tomorrow she'll claim she's a Rough Rider. The table behind them erupted in laughter. Someone had already started a betting pool. How long until she's fired? How long until she admits it was a joke? How long until someone reports her to federal authorities for impersonating military personnel? Thea poured the drink, set it down, took the money, said nothing. Her face showed the blank pleasantness of professional service, the expression that gave nothing away, that refused to engage with mockery or provocation. The shift dragged on. More customers, more sideways, glances, more whispered comments pitched just loud enough to be heard. Someone ordered a shot and called it a Nighthawk special, pointing to the cheapest well vodka on the shelf. The implication was clear. Cheap. Fake. Not what it claimed to be. Thea served it. Her hands gripped the bottle with 3 fingers on the base thumb and index supporting the edge. Not how bartenders normally held bottles. How operators held equipment under stress, the grip that prevented drops when adrenaline made fine motor control unreliable, when mission failure was measured in seconds and mistakes cost lives. Nobody noticed except Master Chief Emmett Garrison back in his usual corner booth, watching like he'd watched every night for the past week. Since the Nighthawk revelation, he'd been present whenever Thea worked, silent and observant, a man working through calculations that didn't show on his face, but were visible in the tension around his eyes. At 2200 hours, the bar started thinning out. Sailors heading back to base before curfew, contractors calling it an early night, the natural ebb that happened when Friday energy gave way to Saturday exhaustion. Thea wiped down the counter, cleared glasses, moved through closing routine with the efficiency of long practice. Her phone buzzed. Text from the number that showed as technical support. One word. Compromised. She typed back. Situation manageable. The response came faster than usual, the handler's control slipping slightly. You were ordered to extract. Base security is investigating. You have 72 hours before Commander Blackwell files formal charges. Mission is over. Mission continues until Brennan's next meeting. 48 hours? Negative. Extract tonight. That is a direct order from General Hartwell. Thea stared at the screen. 2 years of hunting. 9 months of invisible servitude. 93% correlation on casualty data. The smoking gun so close she could taste it. And now, with 2 days until Brennan's scheduled meeting with Luther Torres, with the final piece of evidence within reach, Naval Intelligence wanted to pull her out because regulations said compromised covers got extracted. She typed carefully. With respect, General Hartwell assigned me to catch everyone in the network. Brennan is the courier. Torres is the buyer, but someone higher authorized the access. Someone gave Brennan the Admiral's credentials. Extraction now means they stay protected, means 15 dead operators get no justice, means it happens again. The phone didn't buzz for 3 full minutes. When it did, the message was short. You have 72 hours. If you're arrested, we disavow. If you trigger, extraction mission ends. Your choice. Understood. Thea finished closing out the register. Morrison had already left, trusting her with the final lockup the way he had for months. She armed the security system, locked the front door, walked out into the night. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning. Small 1-bedroom contractor, housing that looked like every other unit in the complex. Generic furniture, nothing personal, nothing that suggested 9 months of residency, except the laptop on the desk and the encrypted external drive hidden inside a book spine that had been carefully hollowed out and resealed. She booted the laptop, opened files she wasn't supposed to have, the ones built from 9 months of patient observation, of listening and correlating, and seeing patterns that existed only when viewed from enough distance that individual data points became trend lines. Silas Brennan's meeting schedule. Every 2 weeks, Tuesday nights, 2100 hours, same booth at the Iron Anchor. Met Luther Torres, Nexus Strategic Firm's senior recruiter. They talked for exactly 37 minutes. Brennan left first. Torres stayed for one more drink, paid cash, left no trail except the pattern itself. 48 to 72 hours after each meeting, classified Navy convoy planning files were accessed from base systems. The access came from credentials belonging to Rear Admiral Thaddeus Merrick, Deputy Commander for Naval Operations Pacific Theater. But the access points were wrong. Not Merrick's office, not his authorized workstations, remote terminals in buildings where a rear admiral had no business being at 3 in the morning. 1 week after file access, Navy teams deployed into operations that should have been secure. And they weren't. Ambushes waiting, enemy forces in positions they shouldn't know about, casualties that were preventable if the intelligence hadn't been compromised. Thea had documented 5 complete cycles, 5 meetings, 5 file accesses, 5 compromise operations, 14 dead sailors. The 15th had died 3 weeks ago in an ambush outside a village that nobody should have known the convoy was passing through. The correlation was 93.7%, statistically impossible to explain as coincidence. But correlation wasn't proof. Not the kind that stood up in court-martial proceedings. Not the kind that survived defense attorneys and classified information procedures and the institutional pressure to protect flag officers from scandal. She needed more. Needed the smoking gun. Needed to catch them in the actual act of transferring intelligence, needed recordings or documentation or something that made the connection undeniable, even to people who desperately wanted to deny it. 48 hours, one more meeting, one more chance to get it right. She closed the laptop, lay on the bed fully clothed, didn't sleep, just breathed in that rhythm. 4 in hold, 4 out hold. The pattern that had kept her alive when her body was broken. That had carried her through 2 years of hunting. That would carry her through whatever came next. Her phone buzzed at 0530. Different number this time. Official, Naval Station San Diego Base Security Division. Miss Cordell, this is Commander Iris Blackwell, Base Security. I need you to come to my office today at 0900 hours. We need to discuss concerns that have been brought to my attention regarding statements you made at a civilian establishment. Thea typed back immediately. I'll be there. She showered, dressed in clothes that were professional but not military, the careful balance of someone who worked with the Navy but wasn't part of it. Drank coffee that tasted like cardboard. Ran through scenarios in her head, the conversation trees that could branch 100 different directions depending on what Blackwell knew, what she suspected, what she could prove. Commander Iris Blackwell was competent. 35 years old, former judge, advocate, general prosecutor, before moving to base security. She'd spent 3 years in that role, handled a dozen courts-martial, gotten convictions on 11 of them. She didn't bluff, didn't threaten, just built cases and executed them with the methodical precision of someone who understood that regulations existed for reasons and deviations from regulations led to chaos. This interview would be professional, thorough, and if Thea made one mistake, she'd be arrested for stolen valor before noon. At 0845, Thea arrived at the base. Her contractor badge still worked. The gate guard checked her identification, ran it through the system, waved her through without comment. She parked in the visitor lot, walked to the security building's second-floor office with a nameplate that read Commander I. Blackwell Security Division. She knocked. Come in. Blackwell sat behind a desk organized with military precision. Everything at right angles, no personal photographs, no decorations, just files and a computer terminal, and the weight of regulations made physical. She was smaller than Thea expected, barely 5'4", dark hair cut short in a style that required no maintenance. The kind of officer who'd become an officer because she was genuinely good at the work, not because she wanted the rank. Miss Cordell, sit. Thea sat. Hands in her lap, posture respectful but not military, the careful performance of a civilian who worked around military culture without being part of it. Blackwell opened a folder, didn't look at it, already knew what was inside, had memorized the relevant details the way good prosecutors did before confronting witnesses. I've received multiple reports about an incident at the Iron Anchor Saloon 3 nights ago. Reports that you claimed a military call sign, specifically Nighthawk. That's a classified unit designation tied to special operations. Do you know what happens to civilians who falsely claim military credentials? Yes, ma'am. Then you understand why I need documentation. Your service record, discharge papers, proof you were assigned to that unit and authorized to use that designation. I can't provide that. Can't or won't both. Blackwell's eyes narrowed slightly. The folder in front of her remained closed, a prop more than a resource. That's convenient. Ma'am, the records you're requesting are classified above your security clearance level. If you contact the Naval Special Clearance Verification Office and reference case number 77 Delta 92 Tango, they'll confirm my credentials without releasing details. I already did. Blackwell pulled out a printout, slid it across the desk. They confirmed you hold a contractor clearance. Information systems support. Nothing about special operations. Nothing about combat units. Nothing that authorizes you to claim a Tier 1 call sign in a bar full of witnesses. She leaned back, slightly arms crossed. This looks like stolen valor to me. And stolen valor is a federal offense. Impersonating military personnel, claiming credentials you didn't earn, trading on the sacrifice of real operators who actually did the work. There are people serving prison time for exactly what you did 3 nights ago. Thea said nothing. Silence was a weapon. Experienced interrogators knew it. So did experienced operators. The pressure of empty air made people talk, made them fill space with explanations and justifications and words that could be used against them later. Better to wait. Better to let Blackwell play her hand. Here's what's going to happen. Blackwell's voice took on the formal tone of official pronouncement. You have 72 hours to produce legitimate documentation proving you were assigned to Nighthawk operations. Not hearsay, not stories documentation. Service records, deployment orders, something with signatures and classification markings that I can verify through proper channels. And if you can't produce that documentation, I'm recommending prosecution. Federal charges. You'll be arraigned, you'll face trial, and if convicted, you'll serve time in a federal facility. This isn't a threat, it's procedure. Blackwell stood, walked to the window, looked out over the base. Morning sunlight caught the buildings at angles that made everything look clean and orderly. The illusion of a system that worked the way it was supposed to. And in the meantime, your base access is revoked effective immediately. You're banned from entering this facility until the investigation concludes. I need your contractor badge. Thea removed the lanyard from around her neck. Set the badge on the desk. The plastic rectangle that had been her key to 9 months of access to server rooms in administration buildings and the infrastructure that made surveillance possible. Gone in the time it took to lay it flat on polished wood. Is that all, ma'am? One more thing. Blackwell turned back from the window. I've been doing this job for 12 years. I've seen real operators, people who earned their place through blood and sacrifice and years of training that breaks most candidates before they finish. And I've seen civilians who want the glory without the cost, who want people to think they're special forces when they've never been closer to combat than a movie theater. She walked back to the desk, hands flat on the surface, leaning forward slightly. Whatever you think you're doing, whatever game you think you're playing, it ends now. Because if you're lying, I will personally ensure you face maximum penalty. And if you're somehow telling the truth, then you'll have no problem proving it through official channels. 72 hours. Clock starts now. Understood, ma'am. Thea left. Walked down the corridor past offices where officers processed the paperwork that ran military operations. Outside, the morning air carried the smell of diesel and cut grass, the base waking up to another day of routine that most people would never know kept the machinery of national defense running. She breathed. 4 count in, hold. 4 count out, hold. Her phone buzzed. Different number, Silas Brennan's number. She'd memorized it from 9 months of surveillance. Never called it, never acknowledged, she knew it, but stored in her memory the way operators stored information that might become critical later. The message was 3 words. You made a mistake. She didn't respond. Walked to her car, drove back toward the contractor housing mine, already working through the new parameters. Base access revoked. 72 hours until prosecution. 48 hours until Brennan's scheduled meeting with Torres. The windows closing the margins, collapsing everything she'd built over 9 months, threatening to slip away because she'd forced the revelation too early. Unless. Her apartment felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in with the weight of failed operations and missions that ended before completion. She opened the laptop again. Pulled up the calendar. Tuesday night, 2100 hours. Brennan and Torres, same booth, same 37-minute pattern. The meeting that would provide audio evidence of intelligence transfer. The smoking gun that would make the correlation data undeniable, even to defense attorneys. But she'd just lost access to the base. Lost the ability to monitor the subsequent file access. Lost the window where she could correlate the meeting with Admiral Merrick's compromised credentials with deployment schedules. 9 months of work about to evaporate because regulations said compromised covers got pulled. She opened a secure messaging application, typed to her NCIS handler, need emergency authorization, base access critical, target meeting in 48 hours. The response took 12 minutes, long enough that she knew it had gone up the chain that Hartwell herself was making the decision. Denied. You burned cover. Protocol requires extraction. We're pulling you out. Thea stared at the screen. Read it twice. 3 times. Pulled out after 9 months. After documenting 5 cycles. After 15 operators dead. After 7 teammates murdered because someone sold them out and the institution decided protecting itself was more important than protecting the people who served it. She closed the laptop. Didn't throw it. Didn't break anything. Just sat there breathing in that rhythm that had become second nature. 4 in hold, 4 out hold. Then she made a decision. Orders were orders, except when following orders meant letting traders walk free, meant letting Brennan continue selling convoy routes, meant more sailors dying in ambushes that shouldn't exist while the people responsible retired wealthy and comfortable. She opened the laptop again, started planning. If NCIS wouldn't authorize base access, she'd get it another way. Even if it meant breaking every regulation that was supposed to keep operations legal. Even if it meant crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. Because safety wasn't the mission. Justice was. And justice didn't care about protocol. 48 hours later, Tuesday at 04:45 in the morning, Thea stood outside the naval station perimeter fence. The main gate was a quarter-mile behind her. She'd approached from the south through tree cover that bordered the facility where older sections of fence hadn't been upgraded with the new reinforced barriers. Chain-link 12 feet high angled supports at the top, but no razor wire on this section. Budget cuts or maintenance oversight didn't matter which. The gap existed. She wore dark clothes baseball cap, the old contractor badge still around her neck. Sometimes bureaucracy moves slow. Sometimes credentials didn't get deactivated in the system as fast as they should. Sometimes that slowness was useful. In her backpack, a tablet and portable storage drive, and tools that contractors legitimately carried for systems work, but could also be used for access that wasn't authorized. The line between legitimate and criminal was thinner than most people realized, measured in intent more than capability. She climbed. Muscle memory from 100 obstacle courses from training that had broken most candidates before they finished qualification. Her hands found purchase in chain-link diamonds. Her boots found footholds where metal met metal. Up and over in 40 seconds, landing soft on the other side, knees bent to absorb impact, the way instructors had drilled into muscle memory until it became instinct. On the base side, she paused, listened. No alarms, no searchlights, no patrol vehicles converging on her position. This section was low priority, far from sensitive buildings, the kind of perimeter that relied more on the idea of sorority than the reality of coverage. She moved toward the administration building, stayed in shadows, avoided security cameras using paths she'd memorized over 9 months of observation. Every blind spot, every gap in coverage, every 30-second window where patrol schedules created opportunities for movement that wouldn't be captured on recording systems. The administration building was dark, locked. But her old badge opened the exterior door, the system not yet updated to reflect her revoked status. Inside, she moved to the second-floor server room. The badge worked here too. The door clicked open. Rows of black metal server racks humming with cooling fans, the digital infrastructure of an entire naval command condensed into climate-controlled space. She sat at a terminal, logged in with credentials that should have been disabled. Weren't yet. Pulled up audit logs, file access records, authentication timestamps. The digital fingerprints people thought were invisible, but never truly were. She was looking for the pattern. Brennan's meeting had been last night 2100 to 2137, exactly on schedule. If the cycle held classified files would be accessed within the next 72 hours using Admiral Merrick's credentials from an unauthorized terminal. She ran the search, cross-referenced, built the query that would show every file touched, every login attempted, every transfer initiated. The terminal processed for 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours. Results populated. File access recorded at 0300 hours. 3 hours ago, while Thea had been preparing for this infiltration, Admiral Merrick's credentials. But the IP address traced to Building 7, not the Admiral's office, not any location where a Rear Admiral had legitimate business at 3 in the morning. 12 files pulled, convoy planning documents for an upcoming deployment to East Africa. Routes force composition timing the complete intelligence package that would let enemy forces position for ambush with surgical precision. She photographed the screen with her tablet. Encrypted storage, chain of custody, evidence that would hold up in court-martial proceedings if she lived long enough to present it. She was pulling the second set of logs when the door opened behind her. "What are you doing here?" She didn't jump, didn't spin, just turned slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. Chief Warrant Officer Cyrus Welch stood in the doorway, 45 years old, systems administrator maintenance bag over his shoulder, suspicion written across his face like an accusation. System diagnostics, 0500 maintenance window. Your access was revoked 48 hours ago. Welch stepped closer, set down his bag, but kept his hand near the radio on his belt. And you're not authorized for security audits. You're reviewing authentication logs at classification levels you shouldn't be able to see. There's a security breach. Someone's accessing classified convoy files using stolen credentials. That's not your job to investigate. That's base security. That's NCIS. Not a contractor who's supposed to be banned from this facility. He looked at her screen. His expression shifted as he saw what she'd found, understood the implications. The file access, the unauthorized terminal, the pattern that suggested systematic intelligence theft. You need to log off. Now, Chief Welch. If someone on this base is compromising operations, getting sailors killed, don't you want to know who? What I want is for contractors to stay in their lane. What I want is to not have to explain to my commanding officer why a civilian with revoked credentials is pulling classified audit logs at 0500 in a facility she broke into. Thea closed the terminal, stood, moved toward the door. Welch blocked her path. Not aggressively, just present a wall of uncertainty, trying to decide if she was a security threat that needed escalating or something else he didn't have framework to process. Who are you, really? Exactly who my credentials say I am. Your credentials say you're a technical consultant, but technical consultants don't break into facilities without their access is revoked, don't run security audits on admiral-level authentication, don't know how to navigate classified protocols at this level. Welch's voice dropped lower, more careful. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know what normal looks like. And you're not it. Maybe normal is broken. Or maybe you're exactly what Commander Blackwell thinks you are. Industrial espionage, corporate spy, foreign intelligence operative. Contractors get hired by competitors all the time. People who want exactly what you're looking for. His hand moved toward his radio. I should have you arrested right now. You should, but you won't. Why not? Because part of you knows something's wrong here. You've felt it. Small discrepancies that don't add up. Access patterns that seem off. Orders that don't quite make sense. You're good at your job, Chief. Good enough to notice when the system's not operating the way it should. Not quite senior enough to do anything about it, but good enough to see it. She held his gaze, reading the conflict in his expression, the war between regulation and intuition. Welch's jaw worked. His hand tightened on the radio. Then he keyed it. Base security, this is Chief Welch. I have an unauthorized individual in the server room, administration building, second floor. Need immediate response. The radio crackled. Copy. Team en route. 2 minutes. Thea didn't run, didn't argue, just stood there, breathing in that steady rhythm. In hold out hold. The pattern that kept panic at bay, that maintained operational clarity when everything was collapsing. Welch watched her confusion deepening. You're not even trying to leave. Where would I go? You've already called it in. Running just confirms guilt. So you're just going to wait here and get arrested? I'm going to let the system work. Let security investigate. Let the evidence speak for itself. What evidence? The evidence that someone is stealing classified information from this base. That operators are dying because of it. That the people who should be investigating are either complicit or incompetent. Boots in the hallway. Multiple sets. Moving fast. Military police. The sound of tactical response to security breaches, the machinery of base security activating. The door opened. 4 MPS in body armor, sidearms holstered but hands ready. Behind them, Commander Iris Blackwell. She looked at Thea with no surprise on her face. Just grim satisfaction, the expression of someone whose suspicions had been validated. Miss Cordell, I thought we had an understanding. You were banned from this facility pending investigation. Yet here you are, unauthorized access, 0500 hours pulling classified files. 72 hours isn't up yet. You couldn't wait. Blackwell nodded to the MPs. Detain her. Ma'am, Thea kept her voice level, professional. Someone accessed classified convoy files 3 hours ago using Admiral Merrick's credentials. The access came from Building 7 unauthorized terminal. The IP logs will show exact location and timestamp. The IP logs will show that you accessed files you're not authorized to see, that you broke into a secure facility, that you're either committing espionage or you're delusional about your own importance. Blackwell stepped closer, hands behind your back. An MP produced zip ties, not handcuffs. Zip ties sent a different message. You're not military. You're not even worth the medal. Thea complied. Felt the plastic tighten around her wrist, not enough to cut circulation, but secure enough that movement was pointless. Search her. The pat-down was professional, efficient. They confiscated her tablet, her phone, the portable drive, even the pen from her shirt pocket. The watch stayed on her wrist. Basic black-faced military time display. Nothing remarkable except the small recessed button on the side. Easy to miss unless you knew to look for it. Thea didn't press it. Not yet. Where are we taking her holding facility? Cell 3, isolated detention until we can get a full investigative team assembled. Cell 3 was for criminal detainees, for people who'd crossed lines that required federal prosecution. They escorted her out through the hallway downstairs past the security checkpoint where early shift officers were arriving for the day. Someone took a photo, probably already posting it to Navy social media. The contractor who claimed to be Nighthawk arrested for breaking into secure facilities. The stolen Valor girl who couldn't let it go. The collapse of credibility documented in real time. The holding facility was a low concrete building near the base perimeter. 6 cells, 1 processing area. The institutional smell of industrial cleaner fighting a losing battle against decades of human occupation. Cell 3 was 8 by 10 feet. Concrete walls, metal bench, toilet without a lid, small window near the ceiling that showed only sky, no ground reference, no way to mark time except by the quality of light. They cut the zip ties, locked the door, left her alone. Thea sat on the bench, rested her head against the wall, closed her eyes. This was the moment anyone watching would think she'd lost, caught, arrested, mission failed, game over. Except games had rules, and she was about to demonstrate they'd been playing the wrong game entirely. Her watch displayed 0553, 7 minutes until her scheduled NCIS check-in, 0600 every morning for 9 months. She'd never missed one. When she did, protocols would activate automatically. Signals would go out. Chains of command would engage. The machinery she'd set in motion months ago would finally execute. She waited, breathed, watched the seconds count down on her watch face. 0600 came and went. No check-in transmitted, no status update sent. The first missed signal in 273 days. Somewhere in Washington, an alert would be flagging on secure systems. Duty officers would be notified. Response protocols would cascade through command structure. People would start moving. The pieces she'd positioned over 9 months of invisible work were finally in play. In approximately 2 hours, Admiral Merrick would learn something important about whose credentials had been compromised. In approximately 3 hours, Silas Brennan would learn something worse about what happened when patterns became evidence. And in approximately 4 hours, everyone who'd laughed at the bartender, claiming a call sign, would understand what happened when quiet professionals decided invisible was more dangerous than obvious. She breathed. 4 count in, hold, 4 count out, hold. Somewhere above the cell, through the small window, a jet screamed across morning sky. Training flight, young pilots learning to push machines to their limits, trusting the system had their backs. Most of the time it did, but not always. Not when corruption fed from the top. Not when the people meant to protect the system were the ones bleeding it dry. Thea closed her eyes, let the rhythm carry her, waited for the cavalry she knew was coming. Because that's what happened when ghosts missed check-ins. The living came looking, and when they arrived, everyone who'd built careers on dead operators would learn that some debts compound interest, and payment was long overdue. The door opened at 1400 hours. Thea had been in cell 3 for 8 hours and 7 minutes. She hadn't moved from the bench, except to use the toilet once, hadn't spoken, hadn't demanded phone calls or lawyers or any of the rights civilians supposedly had when detained on military installations. Just sat there, breathing in that rhythm, watching the small window as morning light shifted to afternoon gold. Commander Iris Blackwell entered, carrying a file folder. She sat on the opposite end of the bench, didn't open the folder, immediately just studied Thea with the careful attention of someone trying to solve a puzzle that refused to make sense. Chief Warrant Officer Welch verified your claims. Blackwell's voice was different now. Still professional, still controlled, but missing the edge of absolute certainty that had been there this morning. The access logs show exactly what you said. Admiral Merrick's credentials used at 0300 hours from an unauthorized terminal in Building 7. 12 classified convoy files accessed, East Africa deployment plans. She paused. Master Chief Emmett Garrison also came to see me. Made a very compelling case about security threats I should investigate. About patterns of intelligence compromise. About giving you supervised access to verify your findings. Blackwell leaned back against concrete. I don't trust you. I want that absolutely clear. Everything about this situation screams problems. Contractors with revoked access breaking into secure facilities. Civilians claiming Tier 1 designations. Stories that sound like spy novels instead of reality. But I also don't ignore evidence when it's staring me in the face. When a systems administrator confirms unauthorized file access. When a master chief with 25 years of exemplary service vouches for someone. When the patterns you claim actually exist in official logs. She finally opened the folder. So here's what's going to happen. You get 6 hours supervised release. Master Chief Garrison will accompany you. You will document whatever evidence you claim to have found. You will hand it to me, then proper authorities will take over. Official channels, legal procedures, the way things are supposed to work. If you deviate from that plan by even one step, you go back in this cell and stay there until the Judge Advocate General finishes processing your case, which could be months. And during those months, you'll sit in federal detention waiting for a trial that will determine if you spend the next decade in prison. Understood, Commander. Blackwell stood, called for the MPs, release her to supervise custody of Master Chief Garrison. 6-hour authorization, 1400 to 2000 hours. Log it. The MP unlocked the cell. Thea walked out into the hallway where Garrison waited. He handed her a small body camera, the kind investigators use to document evidence collection. Everything you see gets recorded. Everything you document goes through official channels. We're building a case that will stand up in court-martial, not executing vigilante justice. Clear, Master Chief. They walked across the base. Afternoon sun warm on their shoulders. The temperature climbing into the 80s the way San Diego Octobers did when the Santa Ana winds pushed heat west from the desert. Personnel moved between buildings on routine business. Young sailors in formation running physical training. The normalcy of military life continuing around them while underneath corruption was about to crack open and bleed. Garrison led her to Building 7. Administrative offices mostly empty this time of day. Support staff didn't arrive until 0800 left by 1630. The building quiet except for the hum of air conditioning fighting California heat. The terminal room was small, 6 workstations requiring authentication for access. Garrison swiped his credentials. The door clicked open. Show me. Thea sat at a terminal, logged in with Garrison's authorized access since her own credentials were still flagged as revoked. Pulled up the same audit logs she'd accessed at 0500, but this time with the body camera recording every step, documenting the chain of custody, building evidence that would survive legal challenge. Here, she pointed at the screen. Silas Brennan meets Luther Torres at the Iron Anchor every 2 weeks. I have 9 months of observational data. Meeting dates, times, duration. Always consistent. Tuesday nights, 2100 hours booth in the southeast corner. 37-minute conversations. Torres arrives with a briefcase. They talk. Brennan leaves first. Torres stays for one more drink, then departs. She pulled up another window. 48 to 72 hours after each meeting, these files are accessed. Always using Admiral Merrick's credentials. Always from unauthorized terminals in locations where a rear admiral has no legitimate business. Always convoy planning documents or deployment schedules. Intelligence that would allow enemy forces to position for ambush with precision. And the deployments get compromised. Garrison's voice was flat, the tone of a man forcing himself to speak facts that destroyed everything he'd believed about people he trusted. Thea displayed a third window. Correlation matrix. 5 complete cycles documented. 5 meetings. 5 file accesses. 14 operator deaths in ambushes. The statistical probability of this being coincidence is 0.37%, effectively 0. Garrison leaned closer, his jaw tight. Sweet Jesus. There's more. She pulled up financial records. These took 8 months to compile, following money through shell corporations and offshore accounts. But the pattern emerges. $380,000 transferred to accounts linked to Silas Brennan over 18 months. Payments always within 1 week of file access. Always in amounts that correlate with intelligence value. High-risk convoy routes worth more than routine patrols. Deployment schedules with specific timing worth more than general force disposition. Brennan's being paid to courier intelligence. Garrison's voice carried no inflection. Now pure combat flatness, the emotional shutdown that happened when operators processed information too painful for normal response. After 28 years of service, after becoming a legend, after everything he earned, he's selling out his brothers for money. Not just money. Thea displayed medical records, the kind that should have been private, but weren't when you had access to the right systems and knew where to look. Brennan's daughter, Nora, 9 years old, tuberculosis. Treatment costs exceed $200,000. The experimental sanatorium in Colorado Springs charges rates his Navy pension can't cover. He's paying for her to live. That doesn't excuse it. No, it doesn't, but it explains it, and it makes him vulnerable. People protecting family are predictable. They follow patterns. They take risks they wouldn't normally take. They make mistakes when pressure increases. She closed the windows, turned to face Garrison directly. Brennan's next meeting is tonight, 2100 hours. Same pattern, same booth. But he's spooked, knows something's wrong. The Nighthawk revelation, the attention, the investigation. This might be his last handoff before he disappears, before the network protects itself by eliminating the courier who knows too much. What do you need? Visual confirmation that Brennan is meeting Torres. Audio intercept of their conversation. Proof they're coordinating intelligence transfers. Combined with the access logs and financial records, that's enough for arrest and prosecution. When's the meeting tonight? 7 hours from now. If we miss this window, Brennan goes to ground. The network adapts. We lose the chance to catch them in the act. Garrison checked his watch. 14:20. 7 hours to set up surveillance, get authorization coordinate with NC. IS do everything by the book, so the evidence would be admissible when defense attorneys tried to suppress it during court-martial proceedings. We need to inform Blackwell, get official authorization, set up proper surveillance protocols. There's no time for proper authorization. By the time we get clearances and approvals, Brennan will be gone. This is the window. Tonight, 6 hours from now. You're asking me to run an unauthorized surveillance operation on a retired Master Chief, a decorated veteran, a man I served with, a man who saved my life at Manila Bay when we were both young and stupid and thought wars were glorious. I'm asking you to help me stop a traitor before more operators die, before whatever intelligence gets transferred tonight leads to another ambush, before more families get folded flags and condolences that their sons and daughters died serving their country, when the truth is they died because someone sold them out for money. Garrison was silent, the weight of decision visible in his face, in the tension around his eyes, in the way his hands curled into fists, then relaxed, then curled again. 28 years of service, 25 years of friendship with Silas Brennan, 2 years since his daughter Annalise had died in that Manila convoy, died believing the system protected her, died never knowing someone had sold her route for 30 pieces of silver. All right. His voice was quiet but absolutely certain. Tonight, we do it smart. Audio surveillance, visual confirmation. No contact, no confrontation. We observe, we document, we hand it to Blackwell. Let her make the arrests. Let the system work the way it's supposed to, understood? And if this goes wrong, if you're playing me, if any of this is fabricated, I will personally ensure you face maximum penalties. I will testify against you. I will make certain you never see freedom again. I wouldn't expect anything less, Master Chief. They left Building 7, walked back toward the security office. The base around them busy with mid-afternoon routines. Nobody paying attention to two people having a quiet conversation. Nobody realizing that in 6 hours, everything they thought they knew about naval special warfare was going to crack open. As they approached the administration building, Thea saw him. Lieutenant Marcus Holloway walking across the courtyard toward the commissary. He spotted them, recognition flashing across his face. The detained contractor, the woman from the video walking free with Master Chief Garrison. Something was wrong with that picture. Holloway changed direction, moved toward them with the confident stride of an officer who believed regulations were absolute and deviations from regulations required correction. Master Chief, his voice carried the formal tone of official inquiry. Can I have a word? Not now, Lieutenant. Sir, I need to understand why the detained contractor is walking around base. Commander Blackwell issued a restriction order. This individual isn't supposed to be here. She's under my supervision. Official authorization. 6 hours. Holloway looked at Thea at Garrison at the body camera clipped to her collar recording everything. Something's going on. Something Commander Blackwell should know about. He pulled out his radio. Garrison reached for it. Didn't grab, didn't make contact, just a gesture. The kind that said, think very carefully about your next move, Lieutenant. Lieutenant, you're about to make a decision. You can trust that I know what I'm doing. Or you can escalate this and interrupt an active investigation. One of those choices helps catch traitors. The other one helps traitors escape. Sir, with respect, this person was arrested for unauthorized access to classified systems. For claiming credentials she doesn't have. And now she's walking around with recording equipment. I can't just ignore that. What if she does have those credentials? What if everything you think you know is wrong? Holloway paused the radio halfway to his mouth. What? Not everything is what it seems. Not everyone is who they appear to be. Sometimes the people you think don't belong are the only ones who can fix what's broken. Sometimes the system needs people who operate outside normal channels because normal channels are compromised. Sir, I don't understand. You will. Eventually. Probably too late to matter, but you will. Holloway stared at him, trying to reconcile regulations with reality, trying to understand how a Master Chief with 25 years of exemplary service could be vouching for someone who'd been arrested 8 hours ago. Then he made his choice. Keyed the radio. Base Security Lieutenant Holloway. I have eyes on the detained contractor, Thea Cordell, moving unauthorized with Master Chief Garrison toward the administration building, requesting clarification on detention status. The response came immediately. Blackwell's voice sharp with irritation. All units detain both individuals. Master Chief Garrison and Thea Cordell, immediately, no exceptions. Garrison closed his eyes, breathed out slowly. Lieutenant, you just made a choice. I hope you can live with it. Sir, I was following regulations. That's what we're trained to do. Regulations aren't always right, son. Sometimes they protect the wrong people. You'll understand that eventually. Probably too late, but eventually. MPS arrived within 90 seconds. 4 of them moving with professional efficiency, hands near sidearms, but not drawn. The approach that said, this is serious but not yet dangerous, that said comply and nobody gets hurt. Master Chief Garrison. Thea Cordell. Hands where we can see them. Garrison complied immediately. So did Thea. They were zip-tied again. Both of them walked across base in full view of afternoon personnel. Past formations, past offices, past the commissary where sailors stopped to watch. Someone took another photo. The story growing with each retelling. The contractor who wouldn't quit. The Master Chief who got pulled into her delusions. The collapse of credibility documented in real time. Back to the holding facility. Different cells this time, Garrison in cell 2, Thea in cell 3. A concrete wall between them, but close enough to talk if needed. Blackwell arrived 12 minutes later. Her face was controlled fury, the expression of someone who'd extended trust and had it violated immediately. 6 hours. I gave you 6 hours with one very simple instruction. Document your findings. Hand them to me. Let proper authorities handle it. She looked at Garrison through his cell door. And you, 25 years of exemplary service. 3 combat deployments. Multiple commendations. The kind of NCO we build the Navy around. Why would you throw that away for this? Garrison didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet, measured the tone of a man who'd made his peace with consequences. Because I've spent 25 years learning to recognize when something's wrong. When the system isn't working the way it's supposed to. When good people die because institutions protect themselves instead of the people who serve them. The system is keeping operators safe. The system is protecting whoever's selling intelligence to private military contractors. The system is letting people die while we process paperwork and wait for authorization that will never come, because the people who need to authorize it are the ones committing the crimes. That's a serious accusation. It's a documentable fact. Check the logs we showed you. Check the correlation data. Check the financial records. Or keep arresting people who are trying to help and watch more sailors die in ambushes. That shouldn't be possible. Blackwell was silent, her jaw tight, her hands clenched, the physical manifestation of someone whose certainties were developing cracks. You have 6 hours before transfer to Judge Advocate General custody. Both of you. If you can't produce real documentation proving this conspiracy exists, you'll both face charges for unauthorized surveillance, breaking detention orders, and whatever else I can add to ensure this stops. She left, the door locked. The facility returned to its baseline quiet. Garrison's voice came through the wall, muffled but clear enough. Still think this was worth it? Thea responded, her voice equally quiet. Tonight at 2100 hours, Silas Brennan is going to meet Luther Torres. They're going to exchange information that will get sailors killed. And we're going to sit in these cells and let it happen because regulations say we're not allowed to stop it. So that's a yes, that's a yes. Silence for a moment. Then Garrison spoke again. What happens now? Now we wait. I missed my check-in this morning. 0600, the protocols activate. People start moving. The machinery I set in motion 9 months ago finally engages. We just have to trust it happens before Brennan completes his handoff and disappears. And if it doesn't, then 14 dead operators become 20. And the people who sold them out retire wealthy and comfortable. And nobody ever knows what really happened because the system protected itself instead of the truth. More silence. Thea checked her watch. 18 hours. 5 hours and 42 minutes until Brennan's meeting. 6 hours until JAG transfer. The margins getting tighter, the window closing, everything she'd built over 9 months balanced on the edge of timing that was beyond her control now. She closed her eyes, breathed. 4 count and hold, 4 count out hold. The watch button sat unpressed. Emergency extraction. 1 press, 3 seconds full. JSOC response. Helicopters scrambling, federal authority overriding local command, the full weight of special operations protocols activated. But that ended everything. Burn the mission. Let Brennan walk. Let the network survive intact. Not yet. Not unless there was absolutely no other choice. She waited. 1700 hours came and went. 1800. The light through the small window shifting from afternoon gold to evening amber. The base transitioning from day operations to night. Watch the change of shift that happened twice daily, the rhythm of military life continuing regardless of what happened in concrete cells. 1900 hours. 2 hours until Brennan's meeting. 1 hour until JAG transfer vehicles would arrive to transport them to federal detention. Then she heard it. Distant at first, growing louder. The distinctive sound of helicopter rotors. Multiple aircraft. Heavy. Moving fast. Not standard base traffic, not training flights, not routine transport. These were coming in hot, the approach profile that suggested emergency or authority, or both. Garrison's voice through the wall. You hear that? I hear it. That's not routine. No, it's not. The sound grew closer. 4 distinct rotor signatures. Blackhawks, the sound she'd memorized from hundreds of combat insertions from deployments where that sound meant extraction or reinforcement or salvation. They were landing on base close, maybe the parade ground or the helipad behind the security building. The facility shook slightly as the helicopters touched down, engines spooling down to idle, doors opening, boots hitting tarmac, multiple sets, moving with purpose. The facility door banged open, voices in the hallway, sharp, authoritative. The kind that didn't ask questions, just gave orders and expected immediate compliance. Where are they? Cells 2 and 3. Open them, both. Ma'am, I need to verify authorization. I'm a brigadier general with Joint Special Operations Command. That's all the authorization you need. Open the cells now. The locks disengaged, both doors swinging open simultaneously. Thea stepped out into the hallway at the same moment Garrison emerged from cell 2. 2 MPs stood there looking uncertain. Behind them, more personnel, and behind them someone Thea recognized. Brigadier General Constance Hartwell. 3 stars on her shoulders. JSOC commander. Steel gray hair cut military short. The woman who'd authorized Operation Sovereign Ghost 9 months ago, who'd sent Thea undercover, who just activated full emergency response protocols because her operator missed a check-in. She looked at Thea. No surprise on her face. Just acknowledgement. Chief Warrant Officer Cordell, we need to talk. Now. They escorted her out. Not zip ties this time, not restraints, just professional military courtesy, the kind given to someone with authority regardless of what civilian clothes suggested. Garrison came to confusion written across his face as he tried to process why flag officers were arriving by helicopter for a detained contractor. They were moved to a conference room in the security building. Larger space, table, chairs, room for the command structure that was about to take over. Blackwell was already there, her face pale, standing at attention, because three-star generals didn't visit base security offices unless something catastrophic was happening. Hartwell wasted no time. Commander Blackwell, I'm Brigadier General Constance Hartwell, Joint Special Operations Command. This individual, she gestured at Thea, is Chief Warrant Officer Thea Cordell, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, Special Operations Division. She's been operating under deep cover for 9 months, investigating intelligence leaks at this facility. Blackwell's mouth opened, closed. No words came out. Her credentials showed contractor status because that's what deep cover means, Commander. We don't advertise. We don't coordinate with local security. We insert assets and let them operate. When they miss check-ins, we respond, which is why 4 helicopters and 24 federal agents just landed on your base. Blackwell found her voice finally. Ma'am, if she's NCIS, why didn't she identify herself when arrested? Why go through detention instead of triggering emergency protocols? Hartwell glanced at Thea. Good question. Chief Warrant Officer Thea touched the watch on her wrist, the small button visible now that someone knew to look for it. I had emergency extraction, 3-second press full JSOC response. Could have activated it the moment I was detained. Then why didn't you? Because extraction meant mission abort. Meant Brennan's meeting would proceed without surveillance. Meant 15 dead operators got no justice and the network survived intact. She met Blackwell's eyes. Sitting in a cell for 8 hours was uncomfortable. Letting traitors walk free because I valued comfort over mission completion would have been unacceptable. Hartwell's expression showed something that might have been approval. That's why she's NCIS Special Operations Commander. We don't train people who quit when things get difficult. She turned to Thea. Status report. Everything. Now. Thea moved to the conference room display screen, pulled up her tablet, the one the MPs had confiscated, the one Hartwell's team had just returned. Ma'am, I have 9 months of documented evidence showing systematic theft of classified naval intelligence. Primary subject is retired Master Chief Silas Brennan, currently employed by Nexus Strategic Firm. He's been acting as courier meeting with their recruiter Luther Torres every 2 weeks at the Iron Anchor. Intelligence transferred within 72 hours of each meeting. Payments totaling $380,000 over 18 months. She displayed the correlation data. Meeting schedules matched against file access, matched against deployment casualties. 5 cycles documented, 14 operator fatalities. Statistical correlation 93.7%. Probability of coincidence is effectively 0. One of the officers behind Hartwell stepped forward. 2 stars, chest full of combat ribbons. The kind of general who'd spent 20 years leading operators before earning the stars that let him command them. You said primary subject. That implies others. Yes, sir. The file access requires admiral-level credentials. Someone provided Brennan with access either directly involved or catastrophically negligent with security protocols. The credentials belong to Rear Admiral Thaddeus Merrick, Deputy Commander for Naval Operations, Pacific Theater. Where is Admiral Merrick now? Blackwell checked her terminal. On base, ma'am. His office in the administration building. Meeting with staff. Hartwell didn't hesitate. Detain him. Full security escort. No communication devices. No warnings. Do it quietly. I don't want him knowing anything until he's in custody. 2 MPs moved out immediately, and Brennan Hartwell asked. Last confirmed location was the Iron Anchor last night. 2100 hours. Met with Luther Torres, meeting duration 37 minutes, consistent with previous pattern. He's scheduled for another meeting tonight, but I believe he's spooked. The Nighthawk revelation, the investigation, the attention. He knows something's wrong. This might be his last handoff before disappearing. Then we find him before he goes to ground. Hartwell looked at one of her aides. Get NCIS field office on secure line. I want surveillance on Brennan's residence, his vehicle, known associates. If he moves, I want to know about it immediately. The aide moved to a corner, started making calls on encrypted phone. Thea pulled up another data file, her expression controlled but something cold visible in her eyes. Ma'am, there's one more layer. Someone above Admiral Merrick. Someone who authorized Operation Sovereign Ghost initially. Someone who specifically recommended using me for this investigation. Hartwell went very still, her face unreadable. Explain. Vice Admiral Preston Ravenswood. He was oversight authority for my deep cover mission. Suggested using me because my KIA status made me untraceable. But when I cross-referenced timelines, she displayed new data. Admiral Ravenswood accessed the intelligence briefing for my Manila convoy in October 1896, 2 hours before we deployed. Modified the route recommendation. Changed threat assessment. Made it look like updated intelligence when actually it was setting us up for ambush. The conference room temperature dropped 20 degrees. The 2-star general spoke, his voice quiet and dangerous. Are you telling me a vice admiral tried to kill you? Yes, sir. And when that failed, when I survived and got reclassified as KIA, he positioned me to investigate Merrick and Brennan while keeping himself protected in an oversight role. He's been running this network from the beginning, using his position to facilitate access, using his authority to prevent investigation, using operators as commodities in an intelligence market. Where is Ravenswood now? Thea checked her tablet. Left Fort Bragg at 0540 this morning, 40 minutes before my 0600 check-in missed. Timing suggests he was warned. Someone in the JSOC chain gave him advance notice that protocols were activating. Hartwell turned to her aide. Get me Fort Bragg security. I want Ravenswood's last known location. Traffic cameras, base access logs, flight manifests, everything. An issue of federal warrant. Espionage, attempted murder of a federal agent. Conspiracy. Whatever will stick. The aide nodded, moved back to the phone. Master Chief Garrison had been standing quietly trying to process how everything he thought he knew had been wrong. Now he spoke, his voice careful. Ma'am, if I may, Officer Cordell's findings are solid. I've reviewed the data myself, but we're running out of time. Brennan's meeting is tonight, 2100 hours. If he completes that handoff, we lose the chance to catch them in the act, lose the audio evidence, lose the visual confirmation. Hartwell looked at him, really looked. Reading his face, his bearing, the 25 years of service written in his posture. Master Chief Garrison, you risked your career vouching for her. Why? Because she's right, ma'am. I've known Silas Brennan for 20 years, served with him, trusted him. And if she's right, if he's really been selling intelligence, then I need to see it with my own eyes. Need to know the truth. Need to understand how someone I trusted could betray everything we stand for. Hartwell nodded slowly. Fair enough, then you'll observe tonight's operation. Both of you. She looked at Thea. You've spent 9 months building this case. You've earned the right to see it through. But this is now an official NCIS operation. My people run it, my protocols, my authority. If you deviate by even one step, I will have you both arrested for real. And this time there won't be helicopters coming to get you. Understood, ma'am. Good. Now brief me on Brennan's patterns, meeting location, duration, what he does before, what he does after. I want to know everything. 45 hours, 15 minutes before Silas Brennan's scheduled meeting with Luther Torres. The NCIS surveillance van sat 2 blocks from the Iron Anchor unmarked civilian vehicle that could have been anything from a plumber's truck to a delivery service. Inside, the space was packed with equipment, audio receivers, directional microphones, cameras with lenses that could read text from half a mile away. The machinery that made modern surveillance possible. Thea sat in the back headset on watching feeds from 3 different angles. Garrison beside her, Hartwell standing behind them, arms crossed. The full weight of JSOC authority compressed into space designed for 4 people, maximum. Target entering from the north. The surveillance tech's voice was clinical, precise, the tone of someone who'd done this 100 times and knew emotional detachment was the only way to function. Male, 52 years old, matches description of Silas Brennan. Thea watched the screen, saw Brennan walk through the door with the same confident stride, the same easy smile, the legend everyone wanted to be. He scanned the room with professional efficiency, not obvious surveillance detection, but the natural awareness of someone who'd spent 28 years learning to read environments. He moved to the booth, the same one, corner position back to wall, clear line of sight to all entrances. Ordered bourbon neat from a bartender who wasn't Thea, someone who didn't know they were serving a traitor. Audio active. The tech adjusted controls. We have clear signal. The speakers crackled to life. Bar noise conversations, the sound of glasses and laughter and people unwinding after work. Then Brennan's voice. Bourbon. Neat. 10 minutes passed. Brennan nursed his drink, checked his pocket watch, twice the pattern Thea had observed for 9 months. Waiting, expecting. The routine that had become so consistent it was clockwork. Second target entering. Male, 40 years old. Matches description of Luther Torres. Torres moved through the crowd. Suit, tie, contractor, professional. Briefcase in hand, thin leather, the kind that held documents, not weapons. He slid into the booth across from Brennan. No handshake, no greeting, just sat. Audio enhancement active. The bar noise faded. The speakers isolated the booth conversation technology, filtering everything except the 2 voices that mattered. Suddenly, Thea could hear everything. You're early, Brennan's voice carried careful neutrality. Things are accelerating. Torres' voice was smoother, educated, the kind of person who sold death in conference rooms and never saw the blood. Timelines compressed. Need to move faster than planned. How fast? 48 hours. Our clients are preparing operations in East Africa. They need current force disposition. Unit strength, embedded intelligence assets. The complete picture. That's rushing it. Files were only accessed this morning. Takes time to sanitize, to package properly, to ensure nothing traces back. You'll be compensated accordingly. Torres slid something across the table. An envelope. Thin, probably cash or account numbers. Something physical, something that didn't leave digital trails. Brennan picked it up, didn't open it, just weighed it in his hand. This is the last one. After this, I'm out. Medical bills are covered. Nora's treatment is working. I'm done. We'll see. No, Brennan's voice hardened. I'm done. I've given you 18 months, given you enough intelligence to retire on, but I'm not spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, not for any amount of money. Torres leaned back, studied him with the expression of someone evaluating merchandise. You don't get to just walk away. You know too much. You're too valuable. And you've made commitments, contracts, the kind that don't expire because you're feeling guilty. Watch me. The briefcase opened. Torres pulled out a tablet, turned it so Brennan could see the screen. These are your accounts. Every payment, every transfer, every dollar we've paid you over 18 months. All documented, time-stamped, linked directly to intelligence leaks that got he checked the screen 14 American operators killed. If this goes public, you don't retire. You go to Fort Leavenworth for the rest of your life. Die in a cell, never see your daughter again except through prison glass. Brennan's face didn't change, but his hand moved closer to his jacket, to the concealed carry position Thea had spotted 9 months ago. That's leverage, but it's also mutual destruction. You release that, I release everything I know about your network. Names, accounts, operational details. Who hired you, who pays you, every Russian-backed PMC contact you've ever used. We both go down. Perhaps. Torres closed the tablet. Or perhaps we just make you disappear, save ourselves the complication. You could try. Won't be as easy as you think. The tension in the booth was visible, even through camera feeds. Two men who'd worked together for 18 months, who'd gotten rich on blood, who'd reached the point where partnership ended and survival began. In the van, Thea watched, recorded, documented. This was it. The confession, the acknowledgement, the proof that would stand up in any court, in any jurisdiction, before any jury that heard two men calmly discussing the sale of intelligence that got 14 operators killed. We have enough. Hartwell's voice was quiet but absolute. Move in, now. The NCIS team exited the van, 6 agents, body armor, sidearms drawn but held low professional posture that said comply or escalate your choice. They entered the Iron Anchor, moved through the crowd with the efficiency of people who'd practiced this approach 100 times. Nobody noticed at first, just more people in tactical gear, not unusual near a naval base. Then they reached the booth. Silas Brennan, Luther Torres, federal agents. You're both under arrest. The bar went silent, not gradually, instantly, like someone had cut power to every conversation simultaneously. Glasses stopped moving. Breath caught. 300 people watching two men realize their world was ending. Brennan looked up, saw the agents, saw the tactical gear, saw the certainty. His hand twitched toward his jacket but didn't complete the movement. Training and survival instinct. Warring training winning. He moved his hands to the table slowly, palms down, visible, non-threatening. Torres did the same, his face showing confusion and fear and the realization that 18 months of careful planning had just collapsed in 30 seconds. Hands on the table. Both of you. Now. They complied. Silas Brennan, you're under arrest for espionage, conspiracy to commit espionage violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 106 Alpha. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The agents moved in. Professional, precise. Weapons secured, first the compact 9mm from Brennan's shoulder holster. Then restraints applied, metal handcuffs, this time not zip ties. The acknowledgement that these were military personnel, that the charges were serious, that protocol mattered even in arrest. Luther Torres, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit espionage, acting as an agent of a foreign power conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. The bar watched, phones out, recording. The video that would go viral within hours. The fall of a legend documented in real time. Silas Brennan, Bronze Star, Silver Star, 28 years of exemplary service, walked out in handcuffs, while 300 witnesses watched the myth die. As they reached the door, Brennan looked back. His eyes found the surveillance van, found the tinted window. He couldn't see inside, couldn't see Thea watching, but somehow he knew. His lips moved words too quiet for the recording equipment to catch from this distance. But Thea could read, lips could interpret the shape of sounds. Nighthawk, Annie would have been proud. Then he was gone, into a waiting vehicle, doors closing, engine starting, disappearing into San Diego night, toward federal detention, toward prosecution, toward justice. In the van, Thea removed her headset. Her hands were shaking slightly, the adrenaline finally breaking through operational control. 9 months, 2 years, 7 teammates, 14 dead operators. It was over, finally over. Garrison reached over, touched her shoulder briefly, the gesture that said, I understand, without needing words. Good work. Hell of a thing, but good work. Hartwell's phone buzzed. She checked it, her expression hardening. Admiral Merrick is in custody. He's claiming innocence. Says his credentials must have been stolen. that he had no knowledge of intelligence leaks, that he's being framed. How long will that story hold? About as long as it takes to show him the evidence, the correlation data, the financial links, the testimony from Brennan and Torres. He'll break. They always do when they realize the walls are closing and cooperation is the only thing that might reduce their sentence. What about Ravenswood? Still in the wind. Federal marshals have his description. FBI is coordinating with international law enforcement. But he had a head start, probably out of the country by now. False passport, new identity, the kind of extraction that takes planning, which means he knew this was coming, knew when to run. Yes, which means there's at least one more person in this network, someone with access to operational protocols, someone high enough to know when check-ins are missed, when responses activate, someone who can tip off a vice admiral with enough notice to disappear cleanly. Thea was silent for a moment, processing the implications. So this isn't over. No, it's not. Brennan and Merrick and Torres are just nodes in the network. The structure goes deeper, higher, more protected than we thought. Ravenswood is the next target, but he won't be the last. Hartwell handed Thea a folder. This is your next assignment, if you accept. Hunting Ravenswood, building the case against whoever helped him escape, dismantling whatever remains of this intelligence market. It's going to take time, going to be dangerous. You'll be back under deep cover, different identity, different location. Could be months, could be years. Thea opened the folder, saw surveillance photos, financial records, travel logs, the beginning of a new hunt, the trail that would lead from San Diego to Costa Rica to wherever Ravenswood thought he was safe. I'll do it. No hesitation. Whatever it takes. However long, I thought you might say that. Take 48 hours. Rest. Process. Say whatever goodbyes you need to say. Then report to Washington. We'll brief you on the next phase. Yes, ma'am. Dismissed, both of you. They exited the van, walked across the parking lot under stars that were starting to emerge as evening deepened toward night. The base 2 miles north, the ocean 2 blocks west. The city continuing around them, unaware that corruption had just been carved out of their military, that justice had been served in increments. Garrison stopped at his vehicle. You're going back under. Yes. Different person, different life. The same mission. Yes. You ever get tired of it being someone else? Living in shadows. Never getting recognition. Never getting to be yourself. Thea considered the question. It deserved honesty. My team died because someone sold them out. Until everyone involved is in prison or in the ground, I don't get to be tired. Don't get to rest. Don't get to be myself. That's the price. I knew it when I accepted the mission. Still know it now. That's dedication. Or obsession. Maybe both. Garrison extended his hand. If you're ever back this way, if you ever need anything, you know where to find me. Thank you, Master Chief. For everything, for believing me, for risking your career, for helping finish what your daughter started. Thank you for making sure Annie's death meant something, that she didn't die for nothing, that the people responsible will answer for it. He drove away, taillights disappearing into traffic. Thea walked to her own vehicle, the contractor housing apartment waiting. The place she'd lived for 9 months that would stop existing in 48 hours when she became someone else entirely. Inside, she started packing, methodically, efficiently. The laptop, the encrypted drive, clothes, nothing personal, nothing that said who she really was. The habit of someone who'd moved a dozen times, who'd learned not to accumulate anything that couldn't fit in 2 bags. Her phone buzzed. Text from Dan Morrison. Heard what happened with Brennan. Don't know the full story, probably never will, but wanted to say thanks for whatever you did, for whoever you really are. She didn't respond, just deleted the message. Tomorrow she'd turn in keys, close the account, disappear like she'd never been here. The ghost returning to shadows. Another buzz. Lieutenant Marcus Holloway. Ma'am, I don't know how to say this, but I'm sorry. For the video, for the posts, for not believing you, for making everything harder. I've deleted everything, posted clarifications, explained what I can without violating security. It's not enough, will never be enough. But I wanted you to know I was wrong about everything. Thea stared at the message, considered responding, decided against it. Some lessons needed to hurt, needed to be remembered, needed to change behavior through pain rather than forgiveness. She deleted it too. Her phone buzzed again as she finished packing. Garrison's number. Can we talk before you disappear again? She drove to the address he sent. A small cafe 3 blocks from the base, the kind where retired sailors drank coffee and told stories nobody believed. Garrison sat in the back booth, 2 cups already on the table. He didn't stand when she arrived, just gestured to the seat across from him. Hartwell told me you're going back under. Different identity. Hunting Ravenswood and whoever's above him. Yes. How long this time? However long it takes. Garrison nodded slowly, hands wrapped around his cup like he needed the warmth. I've been thinking about what you said at Arlington, about promises, about making sure Annie's death meant something. She did mean something, Master Chief. She was good at her job, good at being your daughter. The fact that someone betrayed her doesn't change that. But it does, because for 2 years I thought she died in a random ambush. Bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. Now I know someone sold her. Sold you all of them. For money. He looked up, met her eyes. You gave me that truth. And I don't know if it makes the grief better or worse. But at least now I know. Now I can be angry at the right people instead of just angry at everything. Thea said nothing. Let him work through it. When you find Ravenswood, Garrison continued, his voice quiet but certain. When you put him in a cell or in the ground, will you let me know? Don't need details. Don't need proof. Just let me know it's done. That Annie's account is settled. I will. He pulled something from his jacket, a small photograph creased from years in a wallet. Annalise in uniform, 26 years old, smiling at the camera with her father's eyes and her mother's smile. Keep this. So you remember she was real. Not just a name on a stone, not just part of your correlation data. A real person who laughed and took pictures and wrote letters home about sunsets in Manila. Thea took the photograph, studied it. The young woman who'd whispered broken things can still cut in a drainage ditch while life bled out. I'll remember. Good. Garrison stood, extended his hand one final time. Then go finish it. For her. For all of them. They shook. He walked out into San Diego morning. Thea sat alone with the photograph and the cooling coffee and the weight of one more promise added to all the others. She slipped the photo into her wallet, next to her own death certificate, next to the list of 7 names she'd carried for 2 years. Annie deserved to be remembered. They all did. She paid the bill, left the cafe, drove back to the apartment to finish packing. By 0900 hours the next morning, she was ready. The apartment stripped back to generic contractor housing. Nothing left that said Thea Cordell had existed here for 9 months. She drove one last time to Arlington National Cemetery, the place where 7 names waited carved in stone. Section 60, the newer section where operators from recent conflicts were laid to rest with full military honors. She stood before the headstones, read the names she'd memorized 2 years ago and carried every day since. Lieutenant Annalise Garrison, 26, photographer, daughter, friend. The woman who'd whispered broken things can still cut while blood pooled beneath them both. Sergeant Booker Whitfield, 32, left a wife pregnant, son born posthumous. Never knew his father's face except in photographs. Chief Warrant Officer Matthias Keller, 37, saved 3 lives in a firefight 6 months before Manila. Couldn't save himself when the ambush came. Corporal Declan Hayes, 29, medic, had written 200 letters home describing the Philippines. The last one arrived 3 weeks after his funeral. Sergeant Finian Cross, 28, marksman, engaged 2 weeks before the convoy. His fiancée never married. Said he was the only man who could make her laugh. Private Judah Thorne, 24, youngest, first deployment, still believed wars were glorious. Manila taught him different in the worst way. Staff Sergeant Rowan Pierce, 35, second in command, Thea's closest friend, the one who'd made her promise that if something happened, she'd make sure their families knew they didn't die for nothing. She knelt, her voice quiet, just her and Stone in the morning sun that warmed granite. Annie, Rowan, all of you, I got Brennan, Merrick's in custody, Ravenswood's next, then whoever's above him. I won't stop, however long it takes, however many missions. I won't stop until everyone who's sold you out answers for it. The wind blew, trees rustled, birds sang, life continuing indifferent to promises made to the dead. She stood, walked back to her vehicle, drove north toward Washington, toward Quantico, toward the briefing that would send her back under. Back to being someone else. Back to hunting ghosts who thought distance and time and careful planning kept them safe. They were wrong. Broken things could still cut. And Thea Cordell was the sharpest piece left. The highway stretched ahead. Miles to go, always miles to go. But for the first time in 2 years, the weight felt lighter. Not gone, never gone, but lighter. Because 15 families had answers now. Because 7 teammates were closer to justice. Because the people who'd profited from their deaths were facing consequences. It wasn't enough. Would never be enough. But it was progress. And progress meant the hunt continued. Meant Ravenswood would be found. Meant Tower 7 would learn that some debts compound interest. And payment was long overdue. She drove, breathed, counted miles in that rhythm that had become as natural as heartbeat. In hold, out hold. Somewhere ahead, new shadows waited. New identities, new missions. The work that never ended because corruption was eternal and justice required eternal vigilance. But tonight, 7 names rested easier. 15 families slept knowing truth had been served. And one woman who should have died in Manila kept her promise the only way she knew how. By hunting until there was nothing left to hunt. By cutting until there was nothing left to cut. By being the nighthawk that never stopped watching, never stopped waiting, never stopped striking when darkness thought itself safe. The highway carried her north, toward whatever came next, toward Ravenswood and Tower 7 and the people who thought themselves untouchable. They'd learn different soon enough. They always did when ghosts came calling, and Thea Cordell was very good at haunting.